Hello, it's time for Chapter 5, Books and the Reading Center. I really love this textbook because I think it has so many great examples and ideas, and I think this chapter is especially good. So here we go. And if you are very interested in this stuff, in language development, using books with children, please take CHD 217, which is Language and Literacy for the Young Child. One of my favorite classes to teach, and you learn so much more about all of this, which I think is one of the most important things in working with young children is helping them develop their language skills, primarily through speaking with them and reading. So, your learning center should be filled with picture books. We're going to talk about how to set up the book center, recognizing emergent literacy, understanding reading in the preschool classroom, and helping parents be able to incorporate reading at home, knowing what books promote language development, understanding how to help dual language learners, and recognizing that books promote social development. There's so many things, right? So recognizing that books also promote emotional development, understanding your role, and then providing follow-up book activities, which is one of the assignments that you have. So this says you should read aloud twice a day and use picture books. Yes and yes. There should be in your classroom many opportunities for children to hear and see books read aloud to them. So in the picture, you see a one-on-one opportunity. This is fantastic. A lot of times, if you just sit down on the floor with a book and start reading, children will come to you. And this is a perfect way to do small group reading. Instead of, sort of trying to organize everybody together in one place and have everybody be quiet and listening, it's almost more important that you have those opportunities with kids where it's just one-on-one or small groups where kids can really get involved. A lot of times when you're reading in large group, which is important, but it shouldn't be the primary time that you're reading during the day. When you're reading during large group, it's hard for a lot of kids to be completely focused, right? There's a lot going on. People are moving around. And so opportunities to do small groups and one-on-one are super important. Okay. And then picture books, of course, like, that you're going to read picture books to kids, right? Depending on the ages of the children that you're working with, the pictures may be way more important than the words, but also don't forget that as children get older and begin to understand the connection between words and what you're saying, you need to have books that have words and that have rich vocabulary. So this is how they're developing, so they're understanding things. Bright colors, have things that are related to books in your book area. So it's not just books. One of the things that is really fun to do is just Google book boxes or book baskets and see what comes up. So it's a themed basket around a book that has a whole bunch of stuff in it that goes with the book. So you put it in your book center and it gives the kids things to touch, and play with that are related to the book. Having a flannel board on the wall in your book area, having child-sized bookshelves, right? Because you want them to be able to get the books that they need. Studies have shown that bookshelves that have the fronts facing out are much more appealing to kids, right? Because then they see what they're getting. When you have them in so that all you see is the spines, kids aren't interested in that. One of the things that we had in our some of our classrooms was the back of the bookshelf was a piece of metal that was magnetized so that then you could make magnets that included characters from the books. You could have magnet letters so they could play around with that. Chairs and other seating, have a core of favorite books on shelves. So one of the things that you want to make sure you have is in your reading area, make sure that you always have access for the kids to those books that they love to read. So always have Silly Sally, always have The Napping House, always have those familiar books available so that they can sit down and read through those themselves. Maybe you have a basket in your reading area that you always have the same books in, but then you also want to make sure that you're bringing in new books from time to time. And an important thing is that if you read a book in large group time, make it available in the reading center for kids to touch and read to themselves during free time when they're in centers. Emergent literacy is the steps along the way to reading. So understanding that there is print, right? Understanding the difference between a picture and print. Seeing all of the words and letters that are around you in the world, knowing that that sign says stop, right? Print salient picture books, lots of print, but pictures in the book, and then emerging into reading. So I talk a lot about how you're not just a reader when you're 5 years old and you can read. You can sit down and read a book, right? You start being a reader when you are an infant and you're handling, or, an infant, when you're handling board books, right? That is the developmentally appropriate way of being a reader when you're 8 months old. When you're a toddler and you sit down and you page through a book, even if you have no understanding of what's happening in that book, the fact that you know how to turn the pages means you're a reader when you're a toddler. When you are, and this is in your book, the way that they constantly talk about meaning mastery. What is it? Oh, I'll find it. Manipulation, mastery, meaning. Is that how it is? Anyway, there are reading and being literate is a continuum. And from the time that you are being read to the time, manipulation, mystery, mastery, and meaning. From the time that you are picking up a book and just holding it the right way to the time that you are reading chapter books, that's all on the continuum of learning how to read. In the preschool classroom, read stories daily, use predictable books, allow all children to choose. Predictable books are ones where you can say, what do you think is going to happen next, right? Or the words repeat over and over, like Silly Sally went to town walking backwards upside down, again and again, or the napping house, and all of them were sleeping. And having the children read along and recite those things. Having each child get to choose. One thing that we really liked to do when I taught 3-year-olds was have them bring in their favorite books so that they could show the kids in the class what they liked. Which brings us to reading at home. Having a collection of books for borrowing. We have one of the things that we do in the language and literacy class is we create book buddy bags. So these are bags with books and other material that gets sent home with kids so that they can share reading at home with their parents. Invite children or parents to the book center to listen, or invite them to come in and read to the kids. And then one of the things that we found really helpful was sending home in the newsletter book ideas, books that we have really enjoyed reading at school, books that your particular child has really enjoyed reading at school. There's a ton of terrible, terrible children's books out there. Most of them are connected to TV shows or games or, Angry Birds books or Paw Patrol books or whatever. Most of those are not good books. And parents don't know that. There's so many children's books out there. It's important for us to know what are good ones and what are ones that children like, that are useful for children, so that parents have an idea of what to read with their children. Have a book bee for parents to attend. Keep track of books on my favorite books chart and take a field trip to the library with parents. That's really fun. Champaign Public Library does a great job at tours, and their children's programs are fantastic. So, how do books promote language development? Well, playing with words, understanding words. Anytime you're talking with children, you're helping them with their language development. Anytime they're seeing your mouth form words, anytime they're hearing words, these are all things that are helping them incorporate into their talking skills, right? So making sure that you're using books that sound funny and that you are using different voices and different sounds as you read. Don't just read, in a monotone. Read with enthusiasm and with drama and with expression. Pattern play, books that feature rhyming words or phrases. The king of all of that is Dr. Seuss, right? Follow up activities. What can you do to expand on what you've done with the book, right? Audio recording with sound cues for page turns. You've all, seen or heard those. And then meaning play. What is this talk? Taking the meaning of the book and talking about it and making things up, right? And then dual language learners, the importance of home language. Home language is the language that students speak at home with their families. It's important that we respect and honor that they have more than one language. And in fact, it's so helpful for brain development when kids have more than one language. So helping them understand the language of the classroom, but also maybe learning some words from their home language, from their parents, and talking about those in the classroom. And then reading books that are in other languages as well. If you have the skills to do that, don't try to do it if you don't know the language. But if you speak a little Spanish and you can do it, that's always really helpful. And the way you explain that to other children who don't have a different language is we talk a lot of different ways. People from all over the world talk in different ways. And this is how some people from, wherever talk. And so we're going to learn how to talk. If we ever met a person who spoke Spanish, this is how we would talk to them. Books to promote social development. Obviously, there are all kinds of books about friendships and sharing and all that stuff. You want to present books to children that will be helpful in their development. So you want to see kids or animals, a lot of animals, right, doing things that are positive and things that you want to see your kids doing. Learning to control emotions, helping children express feelings in words, redirecting aggressive actions. Children see their own emotions and their own feelings in books, and that's a good thing, right? We want them to know that their emotions or feelings are okay. And sometimes it helps also work through, like if you can tell a child is sad or angry about something, find a book about being sad or angry. And then talk about, I've noticed, Jacob, that you haven't been very happy. Let's talk about that. What else? The teacher's role in the book center. Your role is really as a facilitator. So you want to get the right books in your book center, making sure you have a good selection that appeals to all the kids in your class and also promotes the ideas and activities that you want to promote. Becoming acquainted with the book you are going to read. This is super important, and this is something that we talk a lot about in CHD 217. You cannot go into a classroom and read a book without having read it first. And the most important thing that you can do when you read a book to a class, so you're reading it before you take it to class so that you can think about what are the things I'm going to highlight, what are the things we're going to talk about as we go through. When you are reading a book, excuse me, especially in a large group setting, this is your best friend. These are Post-it notes. Read through that book, take notes about what you want to say, what you want to highlight, what do you think is going to be some questions that kids are going to come up with, and stick it in the front of your book so that you aren't just sort of caught off guard, right? Make a plan for how you're going to read that book. Introduce the book to get the children's attention. There are a lot of different methods on how to introduce books to a classroom, and one of them is the old-fashioned picture walk, where you go through the entire book before you even read anything and talk about it. I'm not a fan of that, and We can talk more about that in 217. But the reason I'm not a fan of that is because it takes a good 5 to 10 minutes to do that. And that means you've lost 5 to 10 minutes of your children's focused reading time. So I'm much more in favor of this is a book, Silly Sally, and it's by, I can't remember who Silly Sally's by. This is The Napping House, and it's by Don and Audrey Wood. And we're going to read it right now and then read it. The last thing you want to do is hold up a book in front of a class and say, hey, kids, this is the book we're going to read today. Does anybody know what it's about? They haven't read it before. Why would they know what it's about, right? Why are you giving 3-year-olds a pop quiz? So make sure that you're introducing it in a way that is appropriate. Do the reading with as much expression as you can muster. Make sure you're doing louds and softs and highs and lows and accents and, being excited. Read the same stories over and over. One of the things that we talk about in 217 is having a book of the week that you're going to read 3 times at least during the week. And then when you have kids who have favorite books, you're going to read them over and over, and that's how they're learning. Involve the children with repeating words and guessing what comes next. Talk about what the children think about the story afterwards. Again, this is all really important stuff, and you should take 217 so you can learn more about it. Scan pictures or copy for puzzles, flannel board characters, board games. Scanning books and making characters, whether they're puppets or magnets or flannel board pieces, this is so important. This takes the story out of the book and lets the kids manipulate it and move around and get into those characters. It's great. Let books be a lead into other activities and other centers. So you might read a book about building castles and then take it to the block center. Again, take 217. There's way more of this stuff. And it's really important. I think it's one of the most important things that you are doing in an early childhood classroom.